Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Lee Whitmore. I am the Vice President for Education for Focusrite in the Americas. This is our inaugural Pro Audio in Education webinar, part of a series. I could not be more excited than to welcome you. We have an amazing panel today, and there'll be conversation. You're viewing on our YouTube channel at the Focusrite Pro YouTube channel, so feel free. We have experts in the chat to answer questions, to pass questions in to our esteemed panel. And without any further ado, I'm going to jump right in because we've got lots to talk about. Our host today for the panel, our moderator, is a dear friend and colleague, John Escobar. John is at Berklee College of Music in the Music Production and Engineering Department. He is a music engineer, multi-instrumentalist, and he will tell you a little bit more about what he does as we go through the conversation today. John, I am very grateful to have you here today to lead this inaugural event on Pro Audio and Education. I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you again toward the end of the session.
Thanks, Lee. First of all, I'd like to take a moment to thank Focusrite for putting on this amazing webinar. And I'd just like to say what an honor it is to be here with this incredible group of panelists. As Lee mentioned, I'm a professor in the Music Production and Engineering Department at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I'm also a independent music producer and engineer where I get to work on a range of projects from music for film and broadcast, as well as album production and immersive audio. I'd like to take a moment to sort of go around the room here and introduce my colleagues, and then give each one of them a chance to tell all of our viewers a little bit more about themselves and what they do. So we have with us today Martin Hernandez, who is a film sound supervisor and sound designer for films such as Birdman and The Revenant. We have Horacio Malvicino, the founder of Malvicino Design Group. We have Taurin Barrera, the executive director for the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Thank you all so much for being with us. I'm so excited to get a chance to really just talk with you all and share with our audience the sort of the insights and the things that we've learned over this insane last 12 or 15 months. So before we get into that, let me just go around the room and give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. So Martin, maybe if I could start with you, if you could just tell our audience a little bit more about your role, where you're working, and perhaps one or a couple of recent projects that you've had.
Sure. Thank you, John. And thanks before everything. Thank you to Lee and all the people at Focusrite for this kind of invitation. It's always a unique opportunity to get the chance to share own experiences, which is a rare occasion to do that. So I'm glad I'm able to do, and thank you for the invitation again. So what I do, it's called supervising sound editor and sound designer. That means that I have a conversation with the owner of the concept. Most of the times is the director. It can be the producer or the showrunner. And then we translate that conversation into the actual soundtrack. So everything that is involved in the concept of sound, it has to go through that conversation, and it lands in this concept of sound post-production. And I started this a long time ago with a colleague and longtime friend, director Alejandro González Iñárritu. And we started way back in the radio days. And then it shifted through time to, until we landed on the first feature film he did, which is Amores Perros. From there on, we've been together in many other projects, actually all his projects. And then I got involved in Fernando Mireles' Citate de Deus, City of God, and Sean Penn's Into the Wild. And Guillermo del Toro, we did both Pan's Labyrinth, El Laberinto del Fauno, y Hellboy, and so on. No? And it's 20 years, not a lot for some of my colleagues. but I got involved in very interesting projects that I've learned in this, 20 years, and I would love to, share my thoughts on anything that comes out. By the way, through the time, I had the pleasure of meeting also with lovely people such as Horacio, who's actually doing the new stages that we're building. We just built here on cinematic media in Mexico City, and Horacio did the project, so I'm glad to see him around here. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And actually, we just got Ron Romano, who is with Belmont University's Mike Curb College. So welcome, Ron. I'm so glad that you could be with us as well. And maybe if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right over to you and let you introduce yourself, your role, where you're from, and some of the work that you do.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here. Again, my name's Ron Romano, and I'm the technology specialist for the Mike Curb College of Entertainment and Music Business at Belmont University here in Nashville. For those of you who don't know, we're located right on the top of Music Row. So included in our facilities, while we have campus studios, we also own Ocean Way Nashville, which is one of our only places that's commercially available still. We still cut records there and lots of film scores and game scores. We also have historic Columbia Studio A and Quonset Hut down the street at 34 Music Square, which those are two historic studios. Nashville Music Row sort of started right down there at the Quonset Hut, and those are for teaching facilities only. I've been here at Belmont in this role for about 6 years. I moved from the Chicago area. Before that, I spent the last 20 years prior to that in audio video integration, high-end home theater. In the early 90s, mid 90s, I came from the Tascam D88 days of digital tape, having a project studio back up in the Chicago area, and probably started in Pro Tools version 3 somewhere back then. But nonetheless, so all that experience sort of rolled together up to today. I kind of support all the systems for our recording and film facilities and programs. From the S6 consoles you'll see behind me to our DaVinci color correction system for the film programs. I manage all the Mac computers and that for our college, as well as the entire campus. I administer about 800 Mac OS devices on campus and about 600 iOS devices on campus. So I use all the management tools for that. So pretty wide span of things going on here, and I'm really pleased to be here with all these great other folks. So thanks for having me.
Well, it sounds like you certainly have quite a few things to keep track of. So thanks for making the time to be with us. Horacio, I'd like to turn the stage over to you.
So I'm an acoustic designer and a system integrator. I started working as a tech. I moved to the States back in 1977. I went to college here. I went to college in Boston. I got a degree in electronics from MIT. And then obviously, when all my friends and colleagues were going to NASA and GE and all those, interesting places, I moved to New York City to work in a recording studio as a tech. I had no prior, I've been to recording studios since I was a little kid. My dad is a musician. So I got a little bit of that, but I had no idea on how to repair equipment, how to set up equipment, and so the learning curve from going from, a university where you get all the nuts and bolts, but nothing related to a tape machine, it was a big issue, So I landed in New York. I work at, my first job was A&R Studios, place owned by Phil Ramone. We did all the Billy Joel stuff, Foreigner, all the stuff that Phil was producing. Then I moved to RCA Studios, the magical RCA Studios on 44th Street, and at the time in the early 80s, we were the first one to have a digital system to record classical music, and I was the only tech that actually, knew music because, I was a musician, I play drums and I read music, and so I was the only tech that actually, had the ability to read music. So I was stuck with the SoundStream, which was a very archaic system built in Utah back in the late 70s and early 80s. And that with a little Neve console that we had, we toured around the country recording all the classical orchestras. We'll go to Philadelphia with Muti and record that. We'll go to Chicago and do Chicago Symphony with Solti, and then we'll go to Pittsburgh with Andre Previn. So I spend recording digitally, at the early stages, and then Sony came out with the 1630 and the PCM F1, and then I moved to other studios. I work at Soundworks in New York. I was the only tech in New York that serviced the infamous 32-track digital 3M machine, the one that we used to record Donald Fagen, The Night Flight. So I became good friends with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. I did a studio for Donald in his house. I spent a lot of time in the studio with them, because all those records took a long time, And then eventually, I went to the Hit Factory. I worked at Power Station, but I kind of got tired of building studios on the technical side and servicing equipment and going to the studio at 6 o'clock in the morning to set up for 10 sessions that start at 9 o'clock, And so I decided to kind of, jump into the acoustic design part of the job, because I was doing integration and installations for, all of the other designers. I kind of, slowly got into it, and it was kind of interesting because I remember telling my dad in the late 80s, I said, Dad, now I want to be a studio designer. And my dad told me, son, listen, being a studio designer, it's like being a mechanic for a Formula One race team. There's only 8 teams, so your chances are like, very slim. And, 30 years later, I'm doing it. I'm still doing it. I'm doing great projects, and I get to work with, great people and enjoy this every day. And I turned 60 last week, and I'm still having a lot of fun, so, and right now I'm doing a project for Martin in Mexico for cinematic media. We're doing 6 Atmos rooms that we built from scratch during the pandemic. So it was a real challenge. So that's basically what I do.
Amazing, an amazing career, and certainly, this idea of building things during something like COVID is exactly what we're here to talk about. So can't wait to hear more about that. And of course, last but not least, Taurin, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I'm the executive director of the Technology and Applied Composition program here at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And this is a program that focuses primarily on composition, but also recording engineering, sound design, and programming, apps, and kind of interactive audio applications. In my own personal practice, I've kind of been, I grew up building synthesizers, and now we're building studios. And I'm currently in the brand new Bose Center in downtown San Francisco, which is our new recording studio here. Over the last year, we've had our entire campus and not just our college, but also our pre-college, about 700 students, keeping the music going using various Focusrite technologies. Thanks for that. And yeah, I'm really so thrilled to be here on this panel of amazing folks. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, this is going to be a real treat. And maybe before we dive in any deeper, I'd just like to mention to all of our viewers that we are going to be taking questions here at the end. So please go ahead and send them in, and they will get funneled over to us, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible. So don't hold back. Please, if you have questions that we can't quite address in today's panel, don't feel like you can't ask them. So we are putting together this conversation to talk a lot about the last 15 or so months of this unprecedented time that we've all lived through and how we've each adapted in our workflows. And maybe before we get to that specific conversation, I think it would be interesting to sort of see everybody here obviously started in an era pre-pandemic, audio over IP. So if you guys could like go around the room and maybe just tell our viewers, what is one thing that is completely different today than when you started in the music business? And then maybe what's one critical skill because of what you've seen, the changes that you've seen, what's a critical skill that you think any student studying audio production should be learning in order to land the types of jobs and have the types of careers that we've all been lucky enough to have. So again, maybe, I'll go in reverse here. So maybe Ron, if you wouldn't mind, I'll start with you.
Sure. It's obviously gonna be easy for me to say that the the networking side of audio wasn't there back then, and it is today, and that's a huge thing, right? And we as well, when we built our Johnson Center that I'm sitting in here in 2015, we're fairly early on, totally wiring that up with with Dante and Focusrite's RedNet systems, and that's been a huge thing. And I'd say that it's I'm in a unique position. I'm actually in the IT department, and I'm assigned to our College of Entertainment, right? So I think, as we all know, that blend of the audio production, video production skills with IT is so critical in today's environment, all the way around. And I think that the more you can kind of get yourself that knowledge as well. I know when we get into especially audio engineering, right, we're initially excited about cutting records, and that stuff's really important and very cool, not to discredit that, but we also got to realize that there's a whole skill set you can develop around that can translate to so many different positions in the audio industry or film video industry. So broadening your kind of knowledge base has really been huge. And again, I think that's what's been a really great thing for me. I played some music. I started on really, 8-track cassette recording in the early 90s when, brutal, right? But again, hey, we learned, as a lot of people talk, right? The limitations make art, right? Sometimes having only 8 tracks, is what gives you the limitation to, will develop some art. And then, went into the digital tape and things. So seeing all that, and then going into audio video integration, I went from sort of behind the scenes of, recording to how does the consumer want to ultimately experience this, right? And that was one of the key things with high-end home theater. Really honestly, I used a lot of kind of studio control room thoughts for acoustics and design, and I'm no expert, right, in the home theater, right, live end, dead end stuff, all those things, and that just sort of accumulated. And then of course I transitioned to higher education and was managing some audio video systems for another university in Illinois, and then I came down here to Nashville to ultimately tie all that stuff together for our College of Entertainment. So I think that's noticing along the way all those little pieces that you can pull together. And then I think I also leave with something that we talk about all the time here in Nashville. It's the art of the hang. I think career advice, right? The art of being a good hang is so critical to your career. In addition to having all that skill sets, knowing how to work that art of the hang. So I think that's what I got for now, right?
Yeah, push the buttons and be cool about it. Absolutely. Horacio, what about you?
Well, I think that Dante kind of changed the world, the music business world, and what you can accomplish right now with a network and RedNet and Dante, it's so different from what I remember installing in studios in the late 70s, early 80s. I've been through pretty much every system. I've seen Ampex tape machines, 16 tracks, 24 tracks, Scully machines, Otaris, MTR, Studer machines, then the beginning of digital, at RCA, then Mitsubishi and 3M and 32 track machines, then Sony 48. Then in the meantime, an attempt to get something closer to the more democratic side of music, which was the A88 and the Alices, that kind of stuff. And then what we got right now, which is unbelievable. To me, it's still complicated to think in the box. I need faders, I need a console. I mean, I'm that kind of person, and I love to sit down on a console and mix. I don't mix for a living, but what I can tell you is when I work at the Hit Factory, one thing that I used to do is that sessions will end, and I will sit at the console and play a tape, and I played some really good tapes. I mean, like from Paul Simon Graceland, and I would mix Paul Simon Graceland, or we had Springsteen, Born in the USA, and I would mix the song, and I have to say that once I damaged a tape, which was a very embarrassing situation. But I got to see everything, and then you see what we can accomplish now. And now it's an IT world, So anybody that is going to embark in a career as an engineer, has to know IT, has to be savvy about computers and networks, Also remember that back in those days, there was an engineer which would run the console. There was an assistant that would run the tape machine, and would punch in and out. And there was another assistant that would set up the sessions, and now everything's done by one guy, Now, it was a treat to graduate from being the assistant, doing the tape machine to finding yourself in front of a console. And I have to say it. I mean, I got stuck doing a commercial for HBO 30 years ago, and because the engineer never showed up, and the studio manager told me, hey, we got to do this. We had like 80 people playing live at RCA Studios in New York, and I watched the producer come in, and it was Tio Macero, produced Miles, Ketchup, Spain, and I looked at the guy and says, like, he looked at me, he was like, where's John Fausti? John Fausti was engineer. It's like, oh, he's not in, I'll be doing the session. He was like, no, you're not, and he says, do you know who I am? I said, like, yeah. And I was shaking because I'm a huge Miles fan, and but obviously, to be in that position, it was unique, Now the problem is that we had a lot of mentors back in those days. I got to, if as an engineer, even as a tech, I got to see everybody engineer, from Carl Beatty that worked with you, John, at Shiner, you can think about, a Cherney, Chuck Ainley, all those guys passed through the studios that I worked. So for the assistant, it was great because you get to see these great guys engineering. Now, guys get out of college, they buy a Pro Tools rig, and they start on their own, and there's not a lot of people to look up to. So that's one thing that I think it's kind of, it's not great, but definitely get savvy on computers, learn networking, and be open to technology. And you got to explore, you got to read, you got to look at stuff because there's things coming out every day. And then Dante and Focusrite, RedNet, 2 weeks ago at the Stony project that I did in Miami, Shakira was doing vocals in the rooftop, thanks to RedNet. It was a nice day. They wanted to do vocals outdoors. It was sunny. You can see the ocean. Yeah, they did vocals upstairs. I mean, they're doing demos. So it was great. Instead of being stuck in the studio, they were doing guitars in the lounge. Outside. So the sky is the limit. And it's also affordable, which is also great.
Yeah, not to throw more ideas into the bucket there, but really, I think what we're talking about is like not just knowing IT, but actually having a little bit of knowledge of programming languages. Basic programming languages is really like where our world is going with Max MSP and being able to like code things together. I know that at Berklee, more and more, every year we're adding more curriculum that is geared towards programming, and we've got these musicians coming in thinking that they're going to learn, scales up the neck, and really what they're learning is C++, So, Taurin, what about you?
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, we were packing 100 musicians on stage for the orchestra, late night jazz sessions, every type of recording taking place on campus. And when we had to switch things up, I mean, the entire conservatory faculty and students, everybody kind of leveled up in their technology. All of a sudden, all these classical musicians are now studio musicians because they're building these tiny rigs in their bedroom and trying to improvise, acoustic solutions so that it sounds kind of okay over Zoom. Kind of skipping forward closer to, when this past school year began, we outfit our previous building with RedNet, and thanks to this, we were able to have the entire orchestra play spread out throughout the entire building. So every classroom, practice room, studio became an ISO booth that had RedNet, and now our students from graduate, conservatory level musicians to pre-college students using these Focusrite Pro products. And so we have some, quite young students who are now very familiar with these audio interfaces that are, straight out of 2021. So I think especially for those younger musicians, they see a lot of the possibilities here and what can be done. Of course, it's always nice to be in the same room together making music, but at the same time, in the TAC program, we will often do these large scale recording projects for our students. And this year it was entirely remote. We did it with audio movers, and we had students from Colombia, China, all over the United States, Korea tapped in and producing this recording session in real time here. So that's something that we would have never considered doing a year ago, but now that actually seems like something very worthwhile pursuing in the future. It's just a great way to realize projects at some of the big studios all over the world. So I think the outlook right now is really good for students. And I would say that one of the really important skills, whether you're a performer, a composer, or an engineer, is to become good at improvising, and that's improvising solutions, improvising your in the moment, finding the ways to resolve whatever issues you come up against. And that's kind of how we all overcame the last year as musicians. So.
Yeah, beautiful. The democratization of music technology and education of that music technology to everybody has been immense. And I can't wait to get deeper into that. But I want to give Martin a chance to throw your 2 cents in here.
Thank you, John. I don't think we're gonna ever go back again to exactly the same way it was. All this experience and what we've learned through it's gonna stay for a long time, and for many reasons. I mean, one of them is that this pandemic thing, it pushed we were just scratching the idea of working satellite worldwide, each one of us in their own environment. And now we were forced to do that for obvious reasons. And it seems like there's a lot to learn about that. There's a good thing about that thing. And that obviously is going to set a footprint for forever. I think it's very, like Horacio mentioned, is very affordable in a way. It opens doors to broaden, our network of collaborators and editors and people who's involved in doing this thing. In my own specific situation here, we just built from scratch all the sound post department for a company that makes a lot of shows for Showtime, Netflix, HBO, Amazon. And all of a sudden, we found that, thank God I had the pleasure to meeting a long time ago, Pepe Reveles, who was now on Focusrite. And we were talking, how can we make a network inside a company of having all these editors on, small rooms while we build the final Atmos rooms. And Dante and Focusrite, Revenant, and this worked as, without obviously understanding or knowing that there was a pandemic about to burst. And it was just a seamless change. What was the change? The editors went back home with all the equipment, and we just stayed like that. And I don't think that would have ever happened before the Dante Revenant thing. But now we don't want to change that much. So we have our mixers coming from, change a few things, but we kept it like that. And probably we will until we just green like the new Atmos stages, and obviously we'll have to continue that. But in the big idea of this is that collaboration now, it's really a fact, and it's a worldwide fact. It's very impressive how I can be working with everyone anywhere else in the world, and it's seamless.
Yeah, I'd like to spend a little bit more time on these ideas that Taurin and Martin have brought up, because it's true. It felt like, for almost 10 years or maybe even more, we were kind of tiptoeing around this idea of like remote kind of virtual collaborations. And we actually had the tools. We just didn't have the excuse for it to really happen the way that it's happened in the last 15 months. I know, I feel very lucky to have gone through this pandemic sort of 50-50, both from the academic and the professional standpoint, and having to like figure both of these things out. Last March when the pandemic really hit us here, I had just landed from LA working on an NPR show called From the Top, which used to be a touring show. And in the matter of 5 days, we had to figure out how to convert what was a touring broadcast show into a remote recording broadcast show. So we built a bunch of kits. We shipped these kits over the country. The other thing that has been around forever and we just weren't using was VPN. So I basically, I've been sending Focusrite with Max, anywhere, and you just VPN into the thing. You send yourself an Audio Movers link and you send it to the rest of the team that's wherever, and you're in business, And then from an academic standpoint, the same thing applies. It used to be a year ago, either me having a conflict with one of my classes or my students having a conflict with one of my classes meant that there was missed opportunities in terms of information exchange that everybody needed. And now, on a regular basis, like Taurin said, I've got students in China, in Australia, in South America, all over the place. And it's just not a problem anymore. Zoom is, as tired as we all are of Zoom, it's really the new status quo. So I'm curious if you guys sort of go backwards a year in your minds, what was that big change? So what Martin spoke a little bit about it. I'm actually I'm curious, Martin, for you, how has the fact that you've sort of sent all of your editors home, has that had any meaningful impact in terms of the quality of the work, the speed at which it can happen, or more importantly, is there any change in how you can justify the rates that you're charging your clients? That, because I've been presented with that question too. I've been stuck in my mix room and I'm still charging the same rates, right?
Yeah. But it's not it's the person behind that makes the rate, and the actual final product, that's what I like to think.
Well, I completely agree with you. So we're definitely on the same page there.
As you know, Young, I come from a country where we have to do things, when the world is running down, like the police said. So we just grab whatever we have and let's do it. No, the first film I did for Alejandro, coming from radio background and commercials, and with this naivety that characterizes me, it's like, yes, I can do a film for sure. No. And we learned the hard way that. But, that's, the approach for everything. So when Epigmenio Ibarra, the owner of this company and the subdivisions of it, said, we need to do something about the sound of everything we do here, I said, well, I think I can provide some insight to get there. And then literally it's building from scratch, just finding people. There is not an industry as such. Coming from working in LA, I understand what that takes a lot of years and time and generations, passing this over and over. Here, we have newer kids that are better in this understanding. When I say kids, I'm 58, and these are 30 or younger. And then I realized that, yes, we had to build the industry. We have to gather who is already working, and then make a process, and then if we want to have an industry, there needs to be an industrialized way to figure this out. And there is nothing to invent from scratch, just the process needs to be applied. And it was really a very joyful experience to find the people, to get them to work the way we work, and then to get results. We didn't have a stage here to mix the projects. We have the cutting rooms, and then we shifted our stuff to the mixing room, and there was a learning curve between cutting and then hearing this with no time, by the way, because episodes and platforms have a very different schedule, like films. And then again, it was quite faster than what I thought to get that understanding of how this was working, and the results were very eloquent, and we kept on going. So now we have the stages, and I think a lot of people, for now, they will probably want to come and cut here and mix here, but we don't have to. A lot of my editors, not all of them are here in Mexico. Some of them are in LA, and I know stories during the COVID times that they had to finish the features in the mixing room of one of the supervisors in LA. And I'm talking about big features, and that's the way they ended up doing playbacks on the lot for the director, but the actual work was done in the cutting room or the mixing room of one of the mixers. So I don't think that's going to change, and I don't think that should take, it should not harm the actual representation of the final sound we provide, because that's why we are using the right tools and the right people. So as long as you have that equation, that you have the right people and the right tools, well, if they are here or they are there, it's the battle. It shouldn't have an impact on the final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. And talking about tools, Ron, I'm curious, you at Belmont and your role at Belmont, I know that at Berklee, even now, like it's only now recently that we've felt like we can really open up all of our facilities, and we're still struggling with like what the capacity of these facilities can be, et cetera. So what were some of the big changes that you guys had to go through right at the beginning, and how did that impact?
Yeah, well, like many, first thing, everybody just went home, right? So, and that's the middle of semester. So now what? And you got people who've shot films that are sitting on servers, the footage is on footage is on servers. You got all these classes that are midway through projects, and everybody's got to go home. So in March, mid-March, April, we just sort of had to scramble those quick things, get things moved to Zoom to figure out how to get things completed. Well, at the same time, we're trying to design how to bring them back, and how we're going to return to learn in some new ways. So, we started with your typical things like Zoom and audio movers, and, of course, not much of the network stuff at that time because everybody's gone, right? They're all remote. So, and out of the facilities, it was send everybody home. There's very few staff or faculty even on campus. So in the very beginning, so as we started to get clearance for, myself to get back on campus, we started working on those ways to get, things here. And much like Taurin, then we get people back to campus, you got to do social distancing things and masks and cleaning. So we just started doing the same thing, sort of separating people in rooms so you can only do minimal social distances. So in a studio area, we might normally use Studio A for the class, we might be using Studio A, B, C, and D for the class, and we're just even just zooming between rooms. You got instructor in one, right? And the other rooms have a few in it to see, and then they can rotate students in and out of the room where the stuff's going on. So that was a challenge. And those were some of the ways that we met it. And thank God for some of the tools out there. And similarly, of course, I do tech work with Ocean Way as well, which does commercial sessions. So that, everybody sort of disappeared out of there for a while. And that, we had long had history with doing string sessions for film scores and game scores. We do a lot of that stuff. That's, we have Studio A, which we can put, I think, up to 70 to 80 musicians in there. So we can do a pretty good size session. And so they started doing smaller sections with distancing. And, we were no stranger to, we had, like you talked about, we were tiptoeing around with it before pandemic, right? We used Source Connect and a little bit so people, out on the West Coast could listen in and comment and things. And we had that sort of going, but it wasn't really, travel was still okay. So people really mostly traveled in for the sessions and stuff. But nonetheless, as that kind of dynamic changed and we started to get a little bit of freedom back where we could have some people in some smaller sessions, we still had companies, who wouldn't let producers or things travel this way. So we had to get more advanced with audio movers and Source Connect and Zoom and all that stuff to really get a nice interactive feel. There's some technologies called Evercast that we worked with, and that was a really popular one as well. So we just sort of started morphing those tools, and like we were talking earlier, it's exciting because now we've gotten used to those tools. We're like, wow, we can really make some cool things happen as this moves on. And not to go too long, but I think another thing I really want to speak to that we really started to dig in. I jumped into virtualization as well of systems, and it did a couple of great things for us. We started to, we made a couple $1 million investment in the fall of last year during the pandemic I racked up 87 machines that we have Pro Tools and Media Composer on to sort of mimic our lab situations. And through a server system, using a web browser, our students can securely remote into those and connect and edit footage, edit audio, work on their audio from anywhere via a HTML5 browser securely. And in addition, any footage that's on our Avid servers, we have an extensive Avid server system, Nexus system, that footage is all accessible. We also have a way to remotely upload to it as well. So what was cool is it allowed us to continue film productions off-site, students out and about, film editing out and about. It allowed that to continue, but it did a neat thing. Our building, as new as it is, has capacity issues at times because we're so busy, our programs are growing. Well, that virtualization now just increased our capacity too, right? So if we only have so many edit rooms available physically, we can turn students to virtual edit systems at night from their dorm, even if they're on campus or if they're at home or they're out on location. So virtualization has been another really cool thing that I think has been another hidden kind of gem in the pandemic that we found to be very useful in addition to all these great remote, person-to-person technologies. I think it's important to entertain the virtualization possibilities as well.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And actually continuing with this like physicality of studios, I'm curious to hear from Horacio and Martin specifically about the studio that you all worked on together. But I'm sure, Horacio, you've got other studios that you've done over the pandemic. And I'm curious to see what, if any, changes you've noticed about how you construct and how you design a studio. I know for one project that I'm involved in with a nonprofit organization here, a nonprofit studio, and we just so happened, it wasn't planned that way, but we just so happened to build our studios during the pandemic, which was actually a blessing because where we got to completely rethink and redesign was in the HVAC system and, like what filters we use. And those things are usually already complex in a studio environment. And just to sort of keep up with where we saw things going because of COVID and being able to open up a studio in the era right in COVID or post-COVID, we needed to make some decisions there. So I'm wondering what kind of decisions or challenges you all went through in terms of the studio build.
In my case, by the time I was doing a project in Japan, I came back from Japan and I got the virus, So it hit me like, early April, last year. At the time we were working on 7 projects, and, 2 in LA, one in South America, one in Mexico, all over the world. And so, the first thing was like, what's going to happen? Every country had a different approach to the pandemic, For example, the projects we were doing in LA were Capital Studios, and it got really restricted. It's a big company, UMG. They had a lot of restrictions for people coming in and out of the buildings. So we kind of stopped construction on a couple of those. But then like late June, they decided, we need to have the studio up and running in sometime in August. So I went to LA to install the studios in July, which was LA was in a complete lockdown. We had to go into the studio. We had to get tested. It was really hard. Now, as far as the other projects, usually I travel 6 months out of the year, because I I go to the sites, I do site inspections, I meet with the architects, and now, I'm not doing that anymore, which is great. I got to stay more in New York, enjoy my life a little more, and travel a little less. I'm traveling a week a month now, which is, it's not bad. Before it was like two, sometimes even, 2 weeks a month. I think people got used to the fact that, we don't have to see each other to make a decision. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning yesterday to do a site visit for a project we're doing in London, and it was great. Architect was at the site, and, with the camera and the computer, and they sent me pictures. We looked at the construction, and basically it saved me from going to London, So I think that people are getting used to it. Before, they needed to see the face, they needed to see the face-to-face, and I think, I don't know what it was. I think it was a matter of, like human contact, and the fact that if I see the guy here, he's going to give me the right advice. Now they realize that it's not necessary. We built Sony Miami, 4 studios, production rooms, screening rooms, all in 7 months during the pandemic. We opened up 2 months ago. We built Argos, which is almost done. They're doing the installation during the pandemic. It took about 9 or 10 months. We built the new Capitol facility in LA during the pandemic. Then we just did Santa Monica, UMG Santa Monica during the pandemic. So Republic, studios in LA, which is also UMG, during the pandemic. I think people got used to it. I think that this redefines the way we do business, and it's going to stay like that. A big chunk of it is going to stay like that. People are going to get used to it. And obviously, if a client has to pay me a plane ticket, hotel, per diem, and an inspection fee, so that trip, it's about $6 to $7 grand, and we can do it through Zoom, they love it, a lot of people love it. Some people don't, but the same way students got used to edit from a remote location, or somebody, or your editors work from their own houses, I think there's only a matter of, when it comes to, and I see it with my employees, it's only a matter of discipline, because not everybody's cut to work from home. Some people are slackers, and you got to stay on top of them. They are, seriously. Some people are slackers. Some people don't. I see a level of productivity in my people, now that I didn't see before. We're doing better. And last year we did better than the last 3 previous years. So it was a blessing, it was a sad blessing, but it was a blessing at the end of the year. And now we're doing projects. This morning I had a conference call with Ghana. We're doing a mega church with 2 recording studios, with the TV studio, with the streaming room, with a church that sits 18,000 people with an SSL console, and everything was done today by Zoom. I'm not going to go to Ghana for like another 2 months because there's no flights to Ghana. So I think it works. I think it also it brings out the creativity in us as human beings. How do we come up with solutions for situations that they're complicated? And we managed to do it. So it's good on us. We develop a new way of thinking. Let's be creative. Let's try to see how we can do more. And don't stretch ourselves. You said, Ron, you said you work in 5 studios to do 1 session, but we do it. We get it done. You have no idea what it was for me in the 90s when we were doing voiceover work in New York at the Hit Factory through phone lines, right? And we had the voiceover guy in Boston, and we have the studio in New York, and we were doing things over the phone. And it was, with the Telos, phone module. Now it's a lot easier, and technology has brought all that back to us. And I also think that besides all that and the pandemic, and I think that now people realize that, the music business in the 80s and the 90s, it was an elite, now it's a more democratic, situation. I remember seeing my first 8-track Fostex 1/4 inch, and then the Tascam, and then the Tascam Multi-Studio with 4 channels in a cassette. It was unheard of back in those days. Now everybody can have a studio, which I think is great. Music is great. We're happier because of music. We enjoy life because of music. So, if anybody can have access to music, it's even better. So, I think at the end of the day, we get creative and we reinvent ourselves, and we come up with new situations.
So I'm going to start throwing in a couple questions that are coming in so that we can start to spice things up there. But so one question that just came in for Horacio, maybe for Martin and Ron, as you guys are building Atmos rooms with Focusrite, what are the key units that are necessary is the question. For example, is an R1 an essential piece of that puzzle? Or, if you're thinking specifically Atmos with a Focusrite infrastructure on the front end, how would you go about it?
I would like to just mention that was one of the first requests that I had for Horacio and Pepe, because we want to start the culture of building the tracks from scratch into the Atmos concept of the sound, and then do all the down mixes to 7.1, etc. And one of the things that probably helped us a lot to get there is that platforms are requesting that. And in that sense, for sure, at least in the demand that the platforms such as Netflix or Amazon have, they really went further faster than the theatrical version of the Atmos. Still Atmos theatrical is a rare event, so to say, but platforms have pushed this concept, and I'm in this company that actually makes 90% of their projects for platforms. So my main goal was to be fast, to be very good, to be very professional, and realistic of what we needed to do. And the solution that was provided by Focusrite, it immediately made sense, just in terms of how much we're going to spend in these 6 stages, and then the cutting rooms, and then without that, I think it would have been very hard to sell the idea of just going straight at those, rather than. And one of the good things that our projects are exposed to worldwide projects. You cannot, disguise that. The consumer is going to see whatever you do next to the other one, which probably comes from the US or Europe, whatever. So we need to be very conscious that the level of competition is more, now than ever is more. It should be better and even, and that helps a lot also with the editors, because they are learning to compete in a quite different level. And all the production involved, even obviously in the shooting, the production, sound, all the concept has changed for good.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, which is that there's really no such thing as local distribution anymore. Everything is a worldwide distributed thing, So yeah, really, really good points to keep in mind. I'm curious, and actually I'm going to throw this question directly at Taurin, because I know that at Berklee, we've gone back and forth with this particular question of, okay, we've now experienced not only teaching remotely, but also porting over some of our curriculum to a remote platform. And some of it worked, some of it didn't work. And actually, this question is for everybody. But from an education standpoint, Taurin, what is something that you can't wait, that has to go back to the old way of doing things? We've just spent the last 25 minutes talking about how cool COVID has been because we've used technology, but there's some things that I think we still need to go back.
The bars.
Yeah.
Crowded.
Touching a mixing console and feeling the faders and the EQ, you can't. I still feel like you can't recreate that feeling, that muscle memory with just a mouse, or an iPad. Teaching recording engineering over the last year was certainly a challenge. But at the same time, it's a mixed blessing, because our students have all dived fully deep into the matrix. Now we're looking at Dante patches and thinking about different ways to route audio around that might be more applicable, especially in these kinds of new immersive environments. So, the mixing console is great for tracking, but now you actually need to know how to, find your way around giant layers, matrices within matrices of digital patching. And I think to your point earlier, there's very much an emphasis here on building your own tools, and that's kind of continuing the tradition of recording engineering. Everybody's improvising and making this stuff as we go along, and trying to find the best solution for whatever problem we come across. So yeah, learning how to program or design or build your own systems, that's such a critical skill to have in 2021, and I think that's something that we're all realizing is really important for all of our students.
Well, and can I add that I think one thing that's super exciting, as the pandemic hopefully gets behind us, taking all this great collaborative tools that are used for us to be apart and having them available when we can all have the beauty of just human interaction back close together, it truly makes for anything's possible. And I think that's what excites me the most is we've worked within the limit. We've had to be creative with these interactive tools and worked within the limitations of them because of distancing and things. But now when we can get into a project and say, we have all this at our disposal, we can be in the same room, we can use remote tools, the collaboration now goes where we always dreamed it could go. And I think it's going to be mind-blowing what we're going to see and be able to do once we get behind the pandemic. And that's what really excites me to get back to is taking all this great work and putting it together with good old human interaction and having some great times all over the world together.
Yeah, absolutely. From a music making standpoint, I think that's critical, right? Like we've done all of these things with networks and VPN and Dante and all of this stuff, but like at a certain point, physics, we can't beat physics. And the fact that like sound travels at a certain speed and we just can't break that barrier no matter, if we're like really far apart. So if we're in the same building, we can build a robust Dante network that will accommodate that. But if we're inner city or continental type of collaboration, that just hasn't really happened very well during the pandemic. I know, again, with this NPR show, we've gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on every single thing that we've released this year, just because that's the most efficient way to make the project actually seem like it's collaborative on the air. It's just shipping it back and forth to each other. Sorry, Horacio, you were going to make a comment.
For me as a designer, it has pushed me to certain areas where before I would probably stay away from. It pushed me to get more creative, and because I was working from home, and I did some traveling during the pandemic, but I was working from home, and I got more into designing networks and figuring it out. We have one project now that we're doing a live performance hall. We're doing 3 control rooms. We're doing a film mixing room all together. Using remote mic pre's, the MP8Rs. In the studios we're using the 16Rs, A16Rs. We're using the HD32Rs, and then we're using Revenant, AM2s for monitoring. We started getting creative on how we're going to do this. If I want to have something that I want to interconnect 4 rooms, in 3 different buildings, and I think I got more creative for some reason. The spark kind of, I can tell you what I've been designing. I'm designing 3 rooms, 3 facilities right now, and I sit down in front of the computer to do drawings, and I think that my have a wider, have a wide angle lens now. I think it kind of inspired me.
Yeah, so let me this is a perfect segue into another question that came in from one of our viewers, which is there an economical way to connect 2 campuses together with Dante when a direct fiber or wired connection isn't possible? So who wants to field that one?
It depends on how far the 2 facilities are, unfortunately, fiber is the answer. If you're going to go a long way, it's the only way to go, but if the buildings are close, you might be able to get away with cat cable, but they got to be pretty close,
Yeah, great. So I do want to sort of turn completely over to answering some of these questions that are coming in, but I want to give everyone a chance to maybe tell our viewers what's coming up next for each of you. So what kinds of studios are we looking for? Martin, what projects should our viewers be turning on in Netflix? Ron and Taurin, what's on the horizon? Martin, you want to take it?
Yeah, and it's been a learning curve also for the producers and some directors. That I come from the background of doing feature films, and then we realized that the platforms is embracing the feature film concept and the feature film production level or values into the mainstream broader audience, so to say. No, and then the pandemia did obviously its own part to enhance this, and I don't think that's ever going to change. We all want to return to the cinemas, and it's happening little by little. But again, I think this other door that has opened is not gonna be closed. And it was a very good experience for me to bring the learning process of doing the film production or sound post production into this different world and see the results of that. And now it's funny because the directors and producers I'm working with now on the film side are learning on their own how we're going to prepare the mindset to say a lot of people is going to see this feature film in the platform, and just a few are actually going to see it on the theater, and that changes the equation. But it's a good thing to happen, I think. And then the second one as well, on the other side of the spectrum, is that platforms need to incorporate this quality, this scope, the level of communication that a good film has for the viewer that needs to have a bigger depth in the content, no? Or a challenge, something more challenging in the content, which is a good thing for platforms. So I feel like I am in the middle of this new universe evolving between what's made on platforms, what's made on films, and then it's becoming almost like a seamless, thing, which is good for both parts. And I'm glad that I'm living that in the situation that I'm doing right now. 3 of these features were supposed to be featured only, and they turn out to be now a platform feature, and vice versa. No? And I'm very thankful for that. That's not going to stop.
Horacio, what about you? Are there specific projects that you're excited about on the horizon? Where should I go for the next sessions?
We just started in LA. We started doing Kid Cudi rapper, 4 rooms. It's an interesting project in LA, and it's a pretty sizable project. We also started doing another project in LA called EOA, which is 4 studios, big studios, one with an SSL. And then we started doing a project in Mexico, in Tulum, in the jungle, like 10 minutes from the beach. And it's a unique project. It's a free-form building. We're doing a large, recording stage, so we can record 80 to 90 people live. 80 at our Neve, as the console, a B room with another Neve console, a full film mixing room, full blast, theatrical, Dolby Atmos, and a production room. And this is in the middle of the jungle. This is a real challenge. And you have to see the building and the way the building. This is the brainchild of a man that owns a very interesting hotel in Tulum called Azulik, which is a very strange place built on stills. And we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're doing a building that has like all really odd shapes. It's out of a Frank Gehry, but in the middle of the jungle, So now we're, dealing with how do we get electricity there? How do we get the air conditioning there? When you walk around the site and you see signs that's like beware, there's like mountain lions and stuff like that. Then you go, oh, this is interesting, And the guy built a museum there, which is the Azulik Museum, which is unbelievable, won a bunch of awards in France. So we're doing that project for him, and we're doing also a studio in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia. He's building a hotel. We're doing a studio in a hotel, and then we're doing another studio for him in Puerto Rico in a hotel. But Puerto Rico is easy. The jungle in Saudi Arabia are the ones. And the jungle one, the average temperature in the jungle, it's 115 degrees. During the day, and it goes down to 40 at night. So it's going to be an interesting year. But I'm happy. We're busy, which is good, and and we're creating, which is great. And we're giving people the possibility to make music, which is the greatest gift in the world.
Mhm.
Now, Martin, just one question for you. Do you think the movie theaters are going to disappear, or?
No, not at all. I mean, again, I think we all want to, there's a special feeling about being
No
captive
doubt about it.
in the cinema. That's not going to change. Look, vinyls are still around, right?
Oh man, I bought a new turntable. I'm buying vinyl. I thought I brought you a vinyl, once.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, like,
it's like what happened. Let's say that I want to see a very good series that I've been watching on one of the platforms, and all of a sudden they show it here in my local theater. I'm gonna go and watch it there,
Yeah.
just for the full experience, and vice versa. People go see a great movie in the film theater, and then they go to their own room in their house and watch it in the night. Mm-hmm. That's always going to be now one thing is going to complement the other. But going back to our world is like, before we thought this, like cinema had to be done in just this way with only these tools and only by this means. It's not true. It's not true at all.
Yeah.
Excellent. Taurin, what about you? What's coming up for you?
Yeah, I think similar to Martin's point is we've all been cooped up in these studios for the last 15 months. We're ready to get out there, and for us, I'm really looking forward to live performances. And we have this giant Dante system here, thinking how we can kind of reinvent the concert experience, whether it's in immersive audio or kind of augmenting our stage setups, or combining concert halls in interesting ways. So that's something that's really exciting to me. And just now that we've kind of figured out the ins and outs, looking to like test the system, do a real try to break things in an intentional way, and see what kind of audio experiments might result in some really interesting music solutions, all that sort of thing. So we've been through like the training room, and now once we all get back together, I think it'll be a good time to really put all of this to good use.
Awesome. And Ron, I'm going to end with you. Same question, but I'm also going to throw out a question that came in specifically towards you, asking Ron, why is Dante the best? What about AVB and SoundGrid? Any good uses for them? So maybe at the tail end of your answer, you can address that question.
Well, all right. Well, I guess I'll start with projects that we're, up to. Unfortunately, when the pandemic came in, being educational, we sort of shifted gears into pandemic-focused things last year. But we actually did have slated we were sort of working on some Dolby Atmos music, smaller rooms. We were fortunate enough at Belmont, we were the first university in the world to have a theatrical mix stage. You can see behind me, it's 250 seat full mix stage. We're the first people Dolby licensed an RMU2 theatrically. So back in 2015. So we were lucky enough there, and we had sort of started looking at a couple rooms. We have a smaller mix room in our building here that we're looking to go with an Atmos system, and we were even entertaining our Oceanway B having Atmos mix capabilities. So hopefully we'll get back on track with those projects now that we're hopefully getting through this. Secondarily, Belmont started, speaking of the live events, we're very excited for that. We started construction about 2.5 years ago on a like $180 million performance hall here right on the edge of campus that's hopefully slated. Looks like it's going to open this fall. And so we're excited to get that open and hopefully have some live events in there. So some really neat things going on here. As far as Dante, there's lots of great technologies out there. And when right as I came here, a lot of the stuff was spec'd for this building that I'm sitting in that I ended up commissioning, the Johnson Center in 2015. And the people before me kind of thought that Focusrite had the RedNet. It was sort of new, and that looked like the real way to go for them. And we just sort of run with it. And it's no secret that I've worked with you guys, and I love RedNet and Dante networks, because it's just like the Swiss Army knife that does it all, and it's like, knock on wood, it's always success, you know, and minds are blown, and you look back and you're like, wow, that really came together. You know, we haven't gone, we have talked about going down Music Row to Ocean Way via fiber, but there's the cost concerns and you know, cost to value ratio for us and how to work that out. But we certainly go fiber from building to building when there's a performance. You know, in our event center, we might you know, run fiber, run Dante, run RedNet up into our mix room, and kind of that's the remote truck. You know, we're gonna record in one of our mix rooms. So we do things like that all the time, and you know, we've just kind of Audinate and you know, the whole Dante and folks write RedNet stuff. It's just always knocked it out of the park for us. So we've really just stayed focused there.
Excellent. And I'm actually going to keep this rolling. There's a question specifically for us in the academic institutions, asking for us to explain or describe our programs, studios. Ron, you've already given us a pretty good breadth of the type of technology that are in the buildings. How many studios do you have? You know, how many faculty are working in these studios, and how big is the program in general?
We've got our Johnson Center is mostly post-production. It's a 4-story building that has our large mix stage has a small 50-seat 7-1 mix stage with an S6 as well. We've got a 12-seat mix room upstairs at 7-1 as well. We have 30 or so edit rooms, small edit rooms, 4 large labs with, you know, IMAX for learning DAW skills and Media Composer skills. And then we've got across campus our Malloy Studios, which is set up more like a traditional recording studio, you know, space for music production. There's 4 studios over there and 4 small edit bays that go with it. Of course, down the street, we've got our Music Row facilities like Ocean Way, which has 3 studios, A, B, and C, and CSA and Q Hut, Columbia Studio A and Quonset Hut down in 34 Music Square. Those are our primary studio facilities, and we have dozens of faculty. And luckily, being here on Music Row, you know, all of our film and production, music production people work in the industry or have long time careers of making records, making films, writing films. So we're really fortunate with all that. Being Nashville's such a creative hotbed.
Taurin, what about yourself?
The Conservatory has about 500 students in the undergrad grad program, and an additional 200 pre-college students. In the Technology and Applied Composition program, we have about 60 students and 10 studios spread across our 2 different buildings. One's kind of a more analog Neve console, classic recording, complete analog signal path throughout the entire building, and you know, electronic music studios and also labs. That's mainly geared towards supporting composers with sample libraries, every single DAW and, you know, soft synth available to them. And then in our new building, it's kind of like our digital, our new wave, you know, Dante setup with the S6 and the API, and this, as well as some performance halls that can all get tied down into the studio. So we have basically 2 mothership studios with which we can kind of treat each campus as a modular recording studio and tie into those rooms. And yeah, I think that we have about 15 faculty that work. A lot of them work either in the recording industry or as game audio, game composers, and film composers. The video game industry is very big in SF, so we find ourselves working more and more on these kinds of immersive applications, either for VR or you know, augmented reality video games. So that's pretty exciting to be kind of on the cutting edge here.
Excellent. Yeah, just to give you a quick wrap up of Berklee, we have about 30-some studios. Just in MP&E, which is music production and engineering, we have a couple dozen faculty members ranging in all of the different sort of areas of production that we teach. Our studio facilities range from large format consoles. We've got in our dub stage, and one other studio has Neve 88Rs. And then we've got a couple of SSL rooms. We've got some S6s. We've got S5s. We have a Dolby Atmos dubbing stage. And we across the campus more and more, we're starting to integrate more surround sound and Atmos type of environments, because myself and a couple of other faculty members from different departments are creating curriculum and programs around immersive audio and sort of that style of workflow. So more and more we're sort of needing that. And of course, the campus across all of the buildings, we're actually Dante wired around. So I've done things, for instance, where I do a session in the scoring stage and we broadcast it over to the radio station a couple blocks away. So that's a little bit about Berklee. It seems like we're sort of running out of time here. I think we could probably go on forever. And actually, one of the questions that came in was wondering if it was just a coincidence that many of us seem to be from a Latin Hispanic background. And the answer to that is actually no, it's by design. I think one of the things that I'm personally very excited about, and I think we're all excited about, is that Focusrite with this new series, this web series, is we're trying to continue this democratization of learning and education and audio technology, and be able to offer that both to the English-speaking and Spanish-speaking market. So tomorrow, we're going to be doing exactly the same panel with 3 of us here, and we're going to cater that in Spanish to all of our friends around the world that speak Spanish. So I think part of this is, again, just this idea that the pandemic has brought along an incredible opportunity in learning and technology and communication, and I think it's great that Focusrite is taking advantage of that.
Awesome.
Well, I just want to thank you all once again for joining me in this conversation. I think this is a conversation that will continue. I think we're probably going to be looking at perhaps setting up some forums and things like that where we can continue to answer some of the many questions that have come in. And once again, thank you, Lee, and thank you, Focusrite, for putting this on.
Thank you, John. What a wonderful job moderating the panel and moving the conversation into such interesting topics today. Thank you to all of our audience and the questions. Special thank you to Martin, to Horacio, to Taurin, to Ron. It's great to have you all here. As John mentioned, if you're interested, we will repeat tomorrow, and we will have 2 campuses from Latin America. We'll have SAE Institutes in Mexico City, and we'll also have Universidad ICESI in Cali, Colombia. Conversation all in Spanish, and love to have you. If you go to pro.focusrite.com and take a look at our events page, you'll see information there if you'd like to join us again tomorrow for all our portion. For all of those of you that are here today, you will receive a message from us. We will recap with highlights from this webinar, and we also have great stories. In fact, we have a case study that already exists about Belmont University's Mike Kerb College. Thank you, Ron. You can find that on the web today. We've got one coming about the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And to the comment that John made about continuing the conversation, there's a way that you can do that. If you have more questions to ask, all of our panelists have offered very generously to take some time and respond to you. If you go to the landing page, and we'll have it up here in the chat on YouTube in just a moment, for this event, and fill out the get in touch form at the bottom of the page, we will be screening in the education team at Focusrite those questions and get them to our panelists, and you will hear back from us. We're very excited about being able to continue the conversation. So again, thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you to all of our audience. And as I mentioned, tomorrow, if you'd like to join us again, we'd be happy to have you. And this is a continuing series. When we come back for next academic year in the Northern Hemisphere, we will have more conversations like this. So keep your eyes peeled from messages from us at Focusrite. We will be back in October with another installment of this series. So again, Martin, Horacio, Ron, Taurin, thank you so much. John, fantastic job moderating. And thank you, everyone, for being here today and joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks all. Take
Thank you.
care.